Mate, moving on a little bit, because obviously we have to get through a few different subjects here, lad. Tommy Robinson is heading to Israel. He put out a post this morning, said, right after my trial on October 13th, I'll be making a special trip to the state of Israel, thanks to Minister Amaki Shikil, Israel's Minister for Diaspora Affairs and Special Innovation, and to Speaker of Knesset Amo Ohana, who will welcome me at the Israel Parliament. These are real men, patriots of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Likud team, who stand tall for faith, freedom and the West. This lad from Luton will soon stand in the Gaza envelope, the city of David, Judah and Samaria and the Golden Heights. I'll meet IDF soldiers, families of terror victims, visit Yad Vashem, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the Jabinsky Institute, and we're planning on a major public event in Tel Aviv. The support pouring in from the Jewish community, Jewish leaders, has been unbelievable. Messages from Jews and Zionists around the world, from London to New York, Sydney to Jerusalem, haven't stopped. People are fired up, ready to unite and fight for our shared civilization. The conservative movement worldwide must and will collaborate more together against common enemies, and I'll meet many of Israel and world Jewry leaders during my trip. I also plan to meet while in Israel with legal advisors, NGOs, media leaders, ambassadors and political leaders of nations with interest in the UK. This visit means everything to me. We are in the fight together, standing shoulder to shoulder against the jihadi extremists trying to destroy our way of life. This battle has just begun. I've spent my life exposing radical Islam and defending the West, and proudly stand with Israel to make our shared mission even stronger. After October 7th, Israel said they would dance again. As a Brit patriot, I can't wait to visit and see how this incredible nation dances and fights for freedom. Question, Dom, that many people are asking right now is Tommy a shill?
It's a great question. I think the answer is a lot more complicated than a simple, binary yes or no. From my understanding of the sort of Jewish culture, is there are a lot of factions within it. You can't paint the same brush for all of them. And there's two real main factions that exist within the sort of Israeli communities and sort of what they push onto the West. Now, one of them is the sort of left, woke, open borders type of movement that they want in the West. So you see that a lot with people like Nick Lowles, the CEO of Hope Not Hate, proudly collaborating with other Israelis and Jewish people of different European nations, sort of pushing for open borders, pushing for more cultural sort of degradation of Western cultures. So that's kind of one segment there. The other segment is the sort of nationalist part of it, the right wing, the nationalist, the sort of conservative side that want to see Israel remain Israel. And the reason that is because Israel is, by definition, a homogenous state. They're all Israeli. They're all, of Israeli religion and nation. They don't have open borders in Israel. That's the key thing here. You can't just move to Israel and not be an Israeli. And the thing is, the conservative one exists to preserve Israel. But then they're also sort of battling the leftist side because, it kind of goes against their own religion. They're very hypocritical because one side is saying, okay, we need a homogenous society, we need to control our borders to preserve Israel. But then the other side is saying, well, we need to open our borders and remain a multicultural, diverse society, but they're only saying it in the West, which I think is quite interesting. Now, a lot of people have come out in support of Tommy Robinson that are Jewish, but a lot of people are also condemning Tommy Robinson that are Jewish as well. So you're seeing these two factions kind of come together and battle over supporting Tommy Robinson because he is obviously anti-Islamic. He's not. I wouldn't say he's obviously nationalist, but he doesn't want to deport everyone, does he? He said publicly that he's he's fine with Hindus, And he's fine with obviously Japanese and other Asian cultures and minorities, which I also agree with to an extent. I don't want to see massive importations of any culture, that is so sort of dissimilar to ours. But it's an interesting question. I wouldn't say he's a shill because he's clearly siding with the conservative movement of the Israelis. But I would say that, having dual loyalties, it does make me question your loyalties to this country.
Yeah, well, I've always seen sort of Tommy's agenda. As I said, I'm a big fan of Tommy Robinson and what he talks about, what he says. Been to marches myself, and do cover him a lot. I do stand up for him quite a lot with a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, I do see it. His more standpoint. Yes, he's a British patriot. Of course, he's British and wants to see Britain do well. But I do think his more sole agenda is more anti-Islam rather than Britain first. I think it's more anti-Islam is his main sort of agenda that he sort of goes with. So yeah, him going to Israel, as you said, it's irked a lot of people within Israel. Some people don't want to see that, some people do, and I suppose it's a battle of the right and left. Sort of the left wing Jews don't want to see him there, but the sort of right, of course, conservatives do. But what do you think this would do for Tommy Robinson? The impact, of course, within politics, I suppose. What do you think, them sort of recognising him and actually inviting him to a country? He's always been ignored, I suppose, by sort of geopolitics. He's always been ignored by the establishment for very long. Not ignored in that way, but never invited into something. Do you think this is a big move?
Yeah. We have to understand, obviously, the last 2 decades, Tommy Robinson has been vilified and has been a massive scapegoat in media. He's been thwarted at every single opportunity by mainstream media. So I think from Tommy Robinson's perspective is he needs allies in his fight against radical Islam and the rise of Islam in the West. And he sees the Jewish people and Israel as an ally in that fight. The enemy of the enemy is my friend. That's where I think Tommy Robinson comes from with his sort of, his open stance of being a so-called Zionist. So I think it's quite interesting, obviously, to have him be invited by world leaders. I think that does obviously legitimize the movement. But is it the right cultural play? I'm not too sure. I think a lot of people in the movement, they want to see a British first approach. They don't want to see any foreign influence within the UK, whether that be from an Israeli standpoint or an Islamist standpoint. So it's interesting to see him take a side, and sort of place his flag in the ground and said, this is what I believe, this is who I'm supporting and who I want to support me. I've got a question for you. Do you think this is almost like the sort of Israelis almost wanting, or the sort of Jewish movement wanting to tag along to the Tommy Robinson movement because it's such a massive cultural movement in the UK today?
I don't know. I mean, it's a hard one to say because when I do think of Israel, I think especially on the sort of right side of politics, as you mentioned at the start, that people seem to think that it's like Israeli are just like anti sort of Islam straight off the board. But there is that sort of left wing side of things which you could dig into as we talk about with the sort of propaganda and all of these things that you touched upon at the start. But honestly, I think that they haven't got they've got allies in terms of countries, but we're starting to see them kind of go against Israel in certain ways with, recognizing Palestine as a state and, the vast majority. I think that they're just looking essentially to have people on side and suppose Tommy Robinson is a big voice of the right and probably looking to try and get some support or some eyes on it. They've seen these documentaries get hundreds and hundreds of millions of views, and maybe if they can document from a side of things, then maybe it could go a different way in people's trying to support or at least try to understand. Because the thing with Israel is that we've seen is the left have pushed it that there is a genocide going out there. I'm not arguing that there isn't. But of course, all we see really from sort of influencers, left-wing influencers, is Israel is evil. And they're probably trying to shed a light from their side or tell the story from their perspective of things as well. And I think Tommy could do that as well. And to be fair, Tommy's done a lot of standing up for them in a time where there's not a lot of people that do stand up for Israel. So that's probably where it's came from.
Yeah, 100%. I think the sort of national or global outcry of the Israeli and Gaza situation, Israel and Jewish people are seen as quite, vilified in media today. And I'm not arguing for.
Yeah, it's almost like we've gone back. I mean, anti-Semitism has existed for a very long time, but it seems like it's massively on the rise now. Anyway, especially with what's happening in sort of Gaza and whatnot.
Yeah, and it could be quite a good strategy from their side in order to collaborate with Tommy Robinson in order to sort of mend that public image that has been so tarnished in recent years.
Yeah, no, I suppose it's a very interesting one. It is an interesting one if I look at it like that. And again, I'm a supporter of Tommy Robinson. I like it, but yeah, I think it's best to probably just be Britain first, fight for the sort of country and the values of that. But again, if you get invited out there, then take it. I mean, it's not like he's moving there or whatnot. Do you know what I mean? He's not like. I just don't want to see like kind of content just talking about Israel for the next time and sort of giving up the fight within the UK. I don't want it to become like an Israel propaganda machine, Tommy Robinson, because he's done a lot of work for the UK, and he's got to a place now where after 2 decades of being demonized by a lot of British people due to the mainstream media working. He's got a lot of people on side, and people understand that he is a good guy and he's doing a lot of good things. So I hope he continues to do the stuff for the UK. I really don't want this visit to turn into some sort of Israel propaganda thing for the rest of the time. I really don't want to see that.
Yeah, and the conversations that will probably be had is something along them lines, because if they can sort of hijack the Britain First movement and the Unite the Kingdom protest and sort of twist it into a pro-Israeli stance, I think that delegitimizes the movement, right? Because at the end of the day, we've got problems here in the UK with radical Islam. And they need solving. We are not a propaganda machine for the sort of the expansion of Israel into the West Bank and into Palestine. This has nothing to do with us. So I you're not going to agree with every single person on every single topic of conversation. I think that's really important to understand where the differences are, but also understand where the similarities are. I think the majority of the British public are extremely aligned with Tommy Robinson's movement and sort of combating radical Islam in the UK. With that being said, I think you're 100% right. We don't want to see it be twisted into just a Israeli propaganda movement.